Bert! Get him! Yeah! Ron Babe was right.
I'm feeling spry. All right, everybody. It is the 1st of June, or at least it was when I was recording this. I cannot be responsible as to when you listen. Can you believe it, though? Can you believe it? 3 months, and we're going to be there, at least for dove season, Montana, prairie grouse season. 3 short months. Are you ready? I'm not ready. I'm trying to get ready. I've been hitting the training grounds, but it's been raining. I've got a lot of work to do with Waxy. But you know what? I've got all my stuff, and all my stuff equals all my sponsors, which should equal all your stuff. Now, you have to have Onyx maps. There isn't anybody who doesn't have it. But just in case you're that listener, just got into the dog world, and you started Googling, and you said, oh, here's one. It's called the Hunting Dog Podcast. Look at that in iTunes ratings and reviews. It has more than any other dog show in that genre. So it must be good. Oh, let me listen to Ron. Okay, so for you got to know that Onyx is the hunt app that will change your life, change your hunt. Not going to make you shoot any better. Nope, they don't have that layer. But it's going to give you a feel like I didn't have when I was first starting out, 30-some years ago in South Dakota with a little county plot map and trying to figure out what road was a mile. So you can take that right off your plate with OnX. You can take a lot of things off your plate because they got more layers than an onion. All right, so what else you going to need this year, right? You're going to need your gunner kennel. If you don't have one, get it before the season gets here. Okay, put your dog in the safest kennel. There's a lot of knockoffs out there. There's ones that look almost, in fact, from a distance, I'm like, oh, look, that guy's got a gunner kennel. No. There is only one gunner kennel. There is only one Garmin, and that's why Garmin only has one name. It's like Cher, right? Garmin. That is what you put around your dog's neck, your wrist, in your transmitter pocket. That is what you train your dog with. That is what you track your dog with. And DU Supply is where you go to get it. Period. Don't go anywhere else. They sell more collars than any other dog supply company in this country. Yes, there's a reason why that. It's customer service. And you're going to need some canine athlete. It's going to be hot this summer. It's going to be hot early season. You're going to need some canine athlete, hydrate, and recover at a minimum for your dog. You're going to need some, maybe some new dog if your dog's getting a little older, okay? And for those road trips, I have the Canine Pro right in the back where I keep the food bowls. They happen to be gunner food bowls. You're going to need a Mossberg shotgun. Are you going to need a Mossberg shotgun? Well, here, in case you're looking for a new shotgun, check out all the models that Mossberg has. It's not just your grandpa's Mossberg. Not that old. No, they've got a gazillion SKUs. And I'll tell you, that little 410 that I've got, that Black Diamond Reserve, you want to challenge yourself? That is a nice gun. I'm going to be doing some hunting with it this year. I'm not saying I'm not going to fall back onto a 20. I'm just saying I'm going to start out with some 410 because I had such a good time shooting that thing. Of course, probably whatever the X factor is, that Mossberg 410 shot so well. Of course, I had to be pointing it in the right direction, but I had Boss shot shells in the chambers. So, was it me? Is it the Indian? Is it the bow? I don't know. But with a Mossberg and Boss shot shells, you can't go wrong. You can't. There's only one food you should have in your truck. I know a lot of you are going to, the whatever it's called, Alaskan Native or God knows blue, whatever. Do yourself a favor. No other company has the science behind dog food that Purina does. Look at their food lineup and feed it to your dog. Okay? If you're saying, like, my dog, you know what? If your dog is skinny and he's eating 4 cups a day, it might be something wrong with your dog. Nothing wrong with the dog. There we go. Is it the Indian or the Arrow? Anyway, I'm going to have Carl Gunzer and Ruth Ann Lobos on later this week. So next week's episode is going to be Purina-centric. So if you do have questions, and if you are that contrarian, which I can be a contrarian at times, and you have questions about dog food, even if they're stingers, like how come it did, or how come it costs so much, or how come it doesn't do this. Hey, we have their chief veterinarian and field rep on. I'll be interviewing at the end of this week, so please feel free to write me a letter. I'll read it to them. That's what they're there for. Walton's, I'm not saying you're going to need it for your next hunting season. You may not need it. Well, I would hopefully you'll need it because you're still kind of clearing out the freezer, right? You got a couple of pheasants left. You got some partridge left. You got some quail left. I got quail left. I do because I had that late season quail hunt in Kansas. So, yeah, do you need Waltons for next season? No, you need Waltons year-round in your kitchen. Marshwear, I wear that year-round. That has nothing to do with me only in hunting season. I've got it on right now. I got their Marshwear hoodie. I got their Marshwear Buxton pants on. I got the Marshwear underwear on. In fact, I saw this Instagram reel, and it says, your porn star name would be the color of your underwear and the last thing you ate. And I looked at my Marshwear underwear, and I said, well, they're camo, and I was just eating a can of cashews. So I guess my porn star name is Camo Cashew. I don't know if that's even appropriate. But Marshwear, you cannot get a better, more comfortable lineup of clothes. It looks like you're an outdoors person, even if you're not. But we know people listen to the show are. They've got all the cool camo patterns, stretch fabrics, fly fishing hoodies, you name it. They've got everything. And a lot of women's clothes. And a lot of hunting clothes. I'm telling you, go to Marshwear. In fact, I'd be remiss to say that any old general listener right here listening right now can get 15% off Marshwear with HDP15. And with Walton's, HDP10. Okay? And with K9 Athlete, by using the promo code K9 Athlete, you get 25% off your first order. But I will tell you that if you're a patron of the show, and if it's that one person who didn't know about Onyx, didn't know about Patreon, you go to Patreon. That's a website. It's a crowdfunding platform for performers, for artists, for podcasters, and you join. It's like $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever you want to do. It's like buying me a drink. I appreciate it, and you've got access to me. I'll give you my phone number. I'm not going to talk to you every day of the week like my wife talks to my daughters. But if you've got questions, I've got some answers. And if not, I'm like a therapist in the dog world. I can commiserate with your poor purchase of your last dog. Anyway, so Marshwear, Waltons. Oh, no. We still don't have a promo code for Arxis boots. And don't tell me you don't know what Arxis boots are by now. Go to ArxisUSA.com. They have a complete line of rubber boots. My buddy Jack brought them in from Sweden, and I'll tell you what, I couldn't be happier. I'm going to be 100% honest. I still got a pair of my old gum leafs. I was not unhappy with them. I wore them the other day out to training grounds because it was knee-deep wet grass, and I like dry feet. I don't know about you. Well, when that closed down, Jack found Arxis, and Arxis is just they're like gum leaf on steroids. They even look better, if that's possible, because they don't look like suck boots or the cross boots. They don't look like moon boots, right? They fit your feet. It's the whole idea about a rubber boot. You don't want over boots on, like when I was a kid, they called them galoshes. Anyway, so you're going to need all this stuff for training season, for hunting season, and you probably could use a four-wheel camper. Now, we've only got a couple months left of advertising for them, and I hope that I see a few more of them out there. I've seen a few of them out west. I see a few of them on the road, but I know that if you are a wing shooter, and if I was younger than I am now, I'd be living out of one of these things. The four-wheel Model M camper, you cannot beat it. check that out, and you can turn that, just like I did, into a hunting rig. That's what's nice about the Model M. Now, I know you don't need Watermark Brewery beer for hunting and training season. You meaning you individually, personally. But personally, on my side of the fence, I do. I'm a beer drinker, and I have never had a better beer. Well, I shouldn't say this. So I just finished. Justin, if you're listening, Justin is my contact at Watermark Brewery. I just polished off that last half barrel you gave me, okay? And that was Leisure. That's the brand. Anyway, my personal favorites are Leisure and Bodega. Used to be Bodega, now it's Leisure Bodega. I can't explain it to you. I drank Miller Lite for decades. You couldn't get me to drink a Bud Heavy. I was such a wussy beer drinker. And thank God that I found Watermark Brewery, because I started developing a taste for better beer, and I found the best beer. You can too if you're driving through West Michigan, especially this summer. Get off at exit 22, John Beers Road off of 94. When you're coming in from Indiana, or when you're heading out back to your folks' place in Illinois or Indiana, get off at 22, go to Watermark Brewery. It's only a few miles off the road. If you don't have time to stop at the bar and see the courtyard and just enjoy, stop there and get some beer. In fact, if you go to a Shell station right there at exit 23, which is under construction, sorry about that, this is getting long, you can find Watermark beer in some of the local watering holes and some of the local gas stations and taverns and, what am I trying to say, beer and wine outlets. You can find Watermark locally there. But just do yourself a favor. Get off at exit 22. Go right to Watermark Brewery. You're going to love it. I'm going to be there a bunch this summer with a big event coming up, too, which yet to be named. All right. And that's going to be patron. Anyway, the collaboration. But we're going to let that go. All right. I love you guys. Love you girls. American Field Magazine. See, I did it again. American Field Magazine. Do you know, with the promo code Hunting Dog Podcast, you can get 20% off the first year, or if you do a 2-year subscription, 30% off. I am remiss. I have not been mentioning that so I've got it up on my whiteboard. I got their spring issue in my hand. I was reading it last night. Of course, I was born with magazines, right? I mean, we didn't have the internet when I was a kid. The only thing we had was Outdoor Life, Field and Stream. And American Field, it feels like the history that it is. That's what I can tell you. American Field Magazine feels like the history that it is. Check it out. You will love that. You'll love adding that to your periodicals, or drop one of them off that you're tired of and pick up American Field. All right, that's it. Now, this episode, I'm going to let you know. Where are we at here? 12. See, I knew it was going to be a long one. I could just tell. I tried this like 8 times, and I couldn't tie it all together, and I didn't do a good job today. But this episode is like many of mine. It's done on the Zoom recording. But for patrons of the show, I'm gonna get a private YouTube link, or I think that's what it's called, a private YouTube link. I'm gonna put up the video in segments, or not in segments. I'm gonna put the video up. What am I trying to say? My daughter will help me do it. Okay, I'm gonna put this video up, the video from it, not the audio. You're listening to the audio, but in the course of this podcast, we had there was pictures that Will wanted to show me on his phone from this dog or that dog or this deer or this person. So I thought for a few of you, especially patrons, you might want to see this. Okay, you might want to say like, oh, what was Will talking? Let me see a picture of that dog. Let me see a picture of that bear. Let me see a picture of that deer. So I'm going to load. It'll take a week. My daughter's on vacation. I'm going to load the video this time up for patrons to connect to a YouTube page. Okay? So that's just exactly. And then the rest of you, just listen to it like the rest of you do. This was a fun conversation. I wanted to have Will back on ever since I had him on last year, and just to learn more about Will and the family and his. This isn't about This is about Will Primos. You're gonna learn stuff about Will and his uncles and his aunts and his family that you never heard on another podcast. Love you guys. Love you girls. Love you girls more.
All right, everybody. This is a return guest that's been on the show just last year. His name is Will Primos, and I know you know that name. Even if you didn't listen to that show, Will had Anthony Martise come on with him last year to talk about a book on shooting for the. What was the title of that book, Will? Shooting for the hunting.
Yeah, Anthony Matarese and Will Primos are the authors, and it's Straight Shooting for Hunters.
That's it. Straight. I should have had the book out. And I got to dive into that a little bit before we go into. I wanted to get a little bit more of the Will Primos history. Even for a guy who didn't grow up duck hunting, like your name was obviously you were an early pioneer in the game, in the hunting industry, and your name was just out there. Maybe because it was in every store. If you went down the aisle, there was a duck call, there was a turkey call, but everybody knew that name. But I want to dig a little deeper, but I want to talk about that book for a second. Ever since I listened to you and Anthony, I haven't had time to go out and get a private lesson with him, but I did go shoot some sporting clays with a guy who did get a lesson from him.
Okay.
And I probably shot for a cold shoot, a 50-round shoot, never being here before. And me not taking it very seriously. I'm still leaving the gun kind of half under my armpit and I'm calling pull. I'm not trying to break the record at the club. I shot probably like out of about 50 people, I was about number 3 or so. Now, this fella that beat me got a lesson from Anthony Martise. Matarese.
Matarese. Yeah.
Matarese. But I was giving him a hard time because he had a very fancy shotgun, and he even had these little competition ticks where when he put his shells in the gun, he would turn the shell so they would read the same, like double A on the top, this whole mental focus thing. And when somebody else would shoot, he'd put his finger up in the sky and he'd track it before it was his turn. So I knew he was going to beat me. I just didn't know he got a lesson from Anthony. Going forward, I went to Kansas in January for not hunting wild quail very often, a couple times in my life. I did way better than the last time I did. And I just did a training day or a training weekend out in North Dakota 3 weeks ago with some friends. And they had some really good pen raised quail for training birds.
Yeah.
And you've seen them. There's sometimes you can hardly tell the difference other than they're going to be out in front of you, where wild birds you don't. And I purchased 8 birds to work with my dogs, and I used 10 shells. Now, I've never been able to say that before, and all I did was take one piece from that thing is never take your eye off that target. Like that's stuff.
Yeah, when you're feeding information to your brain with your eyes, it's no different than me sitting here right now. And if I point at the computer or I pointed at the corner of the computer with my hand, I'm looking at the corner of the computer, and my brain tells my finger where to go.
Right.
And that's what happens with a shotgun. You don't aim a shotgun, you point it. And that was one of the hardest lessons for me to learn because I was a rifle shooter, grew up shooting BB guns, was a marksmanship instructor in the Air Force, and everything was about long range or rifles or pistols. And I love shotgunning, but I was never any good at it,
Right. And me too. I've been shooting a shotgun since I was 17 years old.
Yeah.
And everybody would talk about lead. Oh, you got to get more lead. You got to get more lead. And you're like, it still didn't mean you weren't aiming. You weren't focusing on just the target. The lead just comes with your eye. I tell you, I'm ready for next hunting season, but I'm still going to go get a lesson from
I got to touch on that. You brought it up. You're talking about lead. So you step up to the bird dog that's pointed or a sporting clay station. And these targets are going to be presented, be either live quail or be clay targets. And there's going to be a distance, an angle, and a speed for that object. And every time it's different. So how do you know the lead? If a quail gets up wild at 35 yards,
Yeah.
and it's going from left to right at a quartering angle, how do you know what lead to give it? So Anthony teaches at some point in every target, you've got to connect with it and you've got to match speeds with that target. So you mount the gun and you mount it right in front of the quail, right in front of the clay, or right on it, and you match speeds for a minute. If the clay's moving 20 miles an hour, your gun is moving 20 miles an hour right with it. And then your brain tells you, ha, stretch it on out and pull the trigger, right. And your brain will tell you when to do it. And that's how you get the lead, by a feel, not by measuring it, not by looking at it, not by you never look at the barrel, but when you do that, you're going to be a lot more successful.
Yeah, and I've shot a lot and shot at a lot of birds. And when you talk about your duck hunting story on a windy day, like you felt like you never shot a shotgun before because you know, it's easy to shoot a mallard when its wings coming down about 8 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And how many people have you heard over the years say, I'm a pretty good instinctive shooter when I'm just out and a bird comes up, because they get all that math out of their head and their eyes do the calculating, because you don't have time to look at your barrel. But those times you do, if you start looking back at the barrel and thinking about that lead, now it's a form of aiming again.
You're done.
Yeah. So I am a better shot from having you and Anthony on the show. I'm telling you.
Well, good. Well, I hope the book, we've gotten some great comments. Straight Shooting for Hunters. You can get it on Amazon.
Yeah.
And I've had so many people tell me if they'd had that book when they were younger, they would have had a whole lot more fun.
And it's an easy read. It's not like it's not like War and Peace.
Yeah.
But it's like the common sense stuff that everybody told you in the blind, but sometimes you just need to read it and soak it in, you know.
There you go.
And I could unabashedly say it's not too early to think about that book for someone's Father's Day or mother. You could give it to your mother for Father's Day if you wanted to, if your mother had.
There you go.
But anyway, Will, the reason I reached out to you the first time was because you were on the Meat Eater show. And I remember talking to you on the phone afterwards when Corinne hooked us up. And we kind of kidded about, boy, that Meat Eater crew don't know much about shotguns, do they? But that's not their forte, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of start from the beginning of, you know, when you were interviewed and we didn't have time to do it on ours. So I went down some of your websites today, and one of the paragraphs that repeats itself is in 1961, you crafted your first duck call after hunting with your Uncle Gus.
Yeah.
Before we get into duck call, because again, this is like kind of a couple old guys at McDonald's having coffee talking about the old days. It was funny how back in the day, uncles were the icons for, like, you loved your dad loved you, but he was busy. But somehow your uncles had just a little more time, or maybe they drank a little more than your dad, or they smoked a cigar and your dad, you know what I mean? What was Uncle Gus like?
Uncle Gus smoked cigars and he drank a little more than Daddy.
I swear to God, I had no idea, but I had my own Uncle Gus's growing up.
I'm telling you. Let me tell you, I forget, it was in the 50s or early 60s that my Uncle Gus commissioned a painting of him and his bird dogs. I'm going to let you look at it.
Oh, yeah.
That's my Uncle Gus.
Wow.
That's Cheyenne. The setter is Cheyenne and the pointer's Lady.
Oh, that's cool.
He paid me $1 a day to clean the dog pens, and I got to tag along. I was too young to carry a gun, and I had short legs, and my uncle and his friend Buck Dearman had long legs. But I would run to keep up and watch those dogs and watch the birds flush. They both shot Browning humpbacks, Belgium made, shotguns, and I just that kindled, that started the fire, you know.
Yeah, because that was before the duck hunt and the duck call. That was just tagging along.
Before I did all that. Now, Gus was duck hunting big time back then, but I was too little to go on those trips.
And, you know, it's funny, too, when I talk to people, I was just interviewed a guy yesterday about youth programs and stuff. But when we were kids, there wasn't an opportunity till an adult anointed you like, okay, you're big enough and strong enough, you pay attention enough. You could have started at 8 or 10 or 12, but it was when that adult said so. It wasn't when your buddy's dads let him go and like, I want to. No, it was like up to your uncle. Your Uncle Gus knew when you were ready to carry a gun, probably before your dad.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Did they do any formal training, or was there just enough birds around and hunting that they just hunted around the area?
They went to field trials
Oh,
a
wow.
little bit. Cheyenne was a champion. And there were so many quail, the habitat, the way the farms were run, the fence rows. Madison County, where I live now, which is north of Jackson, was where all the quail were. And nobody posted their land. You just parked your car, and as long as you respected the land and didn't abuse anything, nobody ever said a word. Wow. And you'd usually, in an afternoon, you'd easily find 8-10 coveys.
Wow. Boy, if I could be teleported to a time,
yeah,
I would go back to when birds were like that, especially.
Yeah, but you know, the most interesting thing now for me is understanding what happened to the habitat.
Yeah.
And as rural people began to try to make a living off the land, they had more than just a little small vegetable garden now. They were trying to use the land, and primarily cattle was fairly easy to do. And all these winter grasses got introduced.
Yeah.
Fescue, Behalia, all this stuff. And it totally is opposite of what a quail needs.
Right. They need that
open.
open.
That, along with Roundup Ready and many other things, just took away the habitat. What's amazing is when you have somebody at home who will spend the money to get rid of those grasses and start habitat change and start managing it and using prescribed fire on the land at the right time of year. We prefer primarily the fall around my group of guys, but it is amazing. The quail will respond.
Yeah. This might take longer because we're not going to get all the questions, but the invite I got to go quail hunting in Kansas, this family did exactly that. The fellow's brother bought the place and passed away. So his brother and his sons run the farm. They make enough to pay for a little bit of crops, but they do the burning, they do the planting, they get rid of the grasses. And I got there a half a day early, and they told me, go ahead, take a walk out there with the dogs. You had an 18-hour drive to get there, And I'm like, okay, I don't know where I'm going, but I put up 3 coveys of quail and a half an hour walk, and so you're absolutely right. You can only maybe do it in checkerboard now, but it's a shame. They will come back like crazy if you're given those couple things they need.
And I bet your friends are getting rid of the cedars too.
Oh, they're getting rid of everything. The only thing
that a hawk can sit in.
Yeah. They still got a line of cottonwoods that go down a creek bottom, a dry creek bottom, but they've got so much cover. I would say it'd be hard for that bird would be having to walk across the dry creek bed for a hawk to get it,
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was just to your point. You could get quail back. Like if you owned a section of land, you could bring that back. They are, and I don't know if there's a bird that's more fun to hunt than that with that rush of that covey coming up.
No doubt. Yeah.
And I looked pretty good after that lesson on the
awesome
guys. But so Uncle Gus, he was a character of all characters, huh?
Oh, he was a hardworking guy, very, very successful. He was my daddy's younger brother. And then my Uncle Billy also was a part. Billy was primarily a deer hunter and a duck hunter, later on a turkey hunter. And so then Uncle Alec, which was Jimmy Primos, my cousin, who was in Primos, the company with me, and his daddy was a big deer hunter and duck hunter and saltwater fisherman for redfish and speckled trout. So my daddy did all these things too. It's just that my daddy was a Depression child, raised in a Depression. He came home from World War II in 1947. When he got home, he was alive. He went straight to the hardware store and bought a Fox Model B side-by-side double trigger for $10 used. And that's my gun now. And and I shoot it well. I had the stock remade to fit my dimensions, and I had it in Arizona 2 years ago. I took it to Arizona, and finally Patrick Flanagan, the outfitter there, he turned to me and goes, "Will, you're shooting 95%." And the host of one of the pieces of the land said, "I believe you're making him a little bit upset." And I said, "Why?" He says, "He likes people who miss."
Well, sorry to disappoint, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's not being a great house guest or lodge guest. So the going back to the duck call, so you're hunting with Uncle Gus later on when you're old enough to go out there. What did this duck call look like? How did you make a duck call? Like, did people
So it was
have a way of
so a
doing
duck
it?
call has a barrel, and the other end that goes in it that holds the reed is a stopper.
Right.
And on that stopper, typically it's a soundboard. I know all this from being in the game call business now.
Yeah.
I didn't know the nomenclature, the names of the product, the name of the parts back then. But his particular call was a single reed call made by a man from Arkansas named Jake Gardner. And Uncle Gus gave me one of his calls and said that I could go with my daddy to my daddy's lathe, take the measurements, and try to fashion a barrel and make a stopper.
Oh,
And I had the thing to make a reed with. And so we used the plastic from a milk carton to make a reed. But it sounded more like a deer call than a duck call, but it made a sound. And
yeah.
it was just my first stab at realizing you could do this. You could make these things and finally figure out how to make them good.
So I'm trying to picture this. I didn't get, even though I grew up, like I said, it's hard to believe growing up in Chicago. I had a pretty good hunting teenage years. I didn't have any, I wasn't walking with anybody when I was 8 years old. But was it typical back in the day if you went to a store where would you get a duck call? I mean, I know it sounds funny, but was there a Primos call out there of another brand? Was there a Kmart? Were they always kind of somebody who made them almost one at a time?
Yeah, so making duck calls and making turkey calls is both of those are American folk arts.
Okay.
And cottage industries, people get good at it. They make them. There's a guy in Madison, Mississippi, Josh Raggio, who is making a very custom, beautiful duck call. Very well done. I wanted to build a call that could get into everybody's hands for 15, 20 bucks. That would really be well. But I started in 1976. So before me was the Loman Game Call Company, the Olt Game Call Company, and there were others. There were many others. The History of the Duck Call is a great book written by Harlan. He's out of Tennessee. He may have passed away by now. I'm not sure. But wonderful book about the history of duck call making and all the developments from the metal, from the real foot style duck call, from the real foot lake in Kentucky, to when we went to Mylar, learning how to, in the old days, the reed was not as sophisticated as they are now and wasn't made as well. So to get the low end, you had to grunt into the call. That added your voice to the call, similar to the way you blow a goose call for some sounds.
Yeah.
And that gave you the lower end. Now the reeds are so well done and so well made. We've gotten so much better. We're using primarily Mylar, which is an electrical insulation product that we've developed into the duck call reeds. And you don't have to grunt into the call near like you used to.
It's a little more user friendly or learning friendly. So you didn't make your mark in the world on duck calls in the beginning then. So
no, sir. Started out with turkey calls. But this year, this is our 50th anniversary. In 2026 is going to be 50 years of Primos being in business. Wow. I sold the business years ago. It still runs, it's still developed, still have great people there. And they're going to have a lot of 50-year anniversary products coming out. Nice. One of which is going to be the famous custom winch acrylic duck call. That's going to be a very high demand product.
Cool. And in one of the videos I was watching, I can't write as quick as I can listen with my ears. When you made your first mouth call for turkey hunting, there was something about a woman who owned a lodge or owned some property.
Yeah, Eleanor Ressler was a lady whose father, Mr. Ham, operated Jackson Point Island up there north of Clarksdale, if my memory's all correct. And she ended up with the lease, and I got invited to go up there and go turkey hunting in the fall, and met Miss Eleanor, and she made mouth calls, and I talked to her about me making them and one thing or another, and so you learn from different people, and there's so many people that came before me, but the products were better, the manufacturing processes were better, and my standardization may have been a little bit better. But it's amazing that Primos was able to get to the size that it did and to make calls that consistently for that long a time.
Yeah, it does. So you talk about using a beer can or part of
that was, in the early days, you had to have a metal frame for a turkey call. So you had to use something. So I didn't know what to use.
Well, so Uncle Gus always had empty beer cans around. So you just went in the back of Uncle Gus's truck. So you fashioned that, and that's that was your start. Would you say your big start, or your concentration was the
turkey calls is the first thing I made and started selling to dealers in 1976.
Gotcha. But mouth calls did exist, or did that lady Eleanor?
Yeah, they existed. Penns Woods, Ben Lee, Quaker Boy. There were people about the same time or before that were making mouth calls. Oh yeah, but the restoration of the wild turkey in the United States, the efforts by the National Wild Turkey Federation to trap and transplant the turkeys and to put them back where they used to be, was a huge success. And we were timing was just very fortunate on our part. We rode that wave and the popularity of that hunting as we built the company for deer, turkey, elk, waterfowl, and predator.
Right. So when you go on to say, okay, now you're going to make it, obviously there's a common thread with calls, especially if it's a mouth call. So you go to make an elk call. Is there a beer can story to your first elk call, or did you?
No, engineers. So the story, so I was trying to make elk calls. And so, I'd go out west and go hunting, and I was trying to, so Wayne Carlton was a pest control guy from Florida who went west and finally made the move and went out there to Grand Junction area and began to make a living as a pest control guy. But then he began to realize that his turkey calls that he sold on the side could also make an elk sound. So he figured that out. And so there were some things that weren't perfect about a turkey call for elk, but if you really worked at it and controlled at it, you could get pretty darn good at it. Huh. And so about 1990, probably 1992 or somewhere around there, I was in Michigan at a big game festival where people were selling products and they had speakers and all that kind of stuff. And there was a guy over there with a booth with elk calls. And this guy was good. He was real good. He was good at cow calling and at bugling. And I kept listening to him. So finally I walked up to him and said, I'd like to buy some of your calls, and I don't want to, I don't want you to know who I am. I'm in the game call business. And I don't want you to think I'm trying to steal your idea or something. And he goes, well, I'd like to talk to you about that. And so I bought some of his calls and started talking. His name was Rocky Jacobson. Corey Jacobson is a famous, unbelievable elk hunter right now that works a whole lot with RMEF. Great, wonderful young man, a great family. He's out of Idaho, and that's Rocky's son. But anyway, in talking to Rocky, he said, look, I don't have any money. I need to patent this thing. I think this can be a great product. So I bought the patent from him. And paid him royalties for 20 years. I mean, it was a great relationship, very, very successful. But the call was different. It had a plate on top of it. And that's what made the elk sound so much easier. It cleaned up the sound. Rather than in a turkey call, you want a break. You want a high to a low to a break. Yeah. And then on an elk call, you want to smooth that out. You want new. And you want to smooth that sound out. And to do that, the plate allowed that to happen. And so anyway, we went from there, and we just had a great success with tackling the elk market. We became the number one selling elk manufacturer in the United States from the state of Mississippi. And I've told this story before. I was in Boise, Idaho, they had about 1,500 people, and a guy had lined up for a big seminar to promote his sporting goods store. And I got up there and they introduced him, and the guy and somebody in the background said, I got a question. And so I walked up there to hear him and hear his question. I heard his question, so I repeat his question. This man wants to know what a redneck from Mississippi is going to teach all these Western boys about turkey hunting. What do I know about turkey hunting? And I said, well, here, let me tell you this. We used to have a lot of elk in Mississippi, but we killed them all. And we're coming to Idaho. So that kind of broke the ice, that kind of broke the ice with them. But, promoting those products. And then we developed the Hoochie Mama. The Hoochie Mama was the greatest elk call of all time, still is. It's a mechanical push it with your thumb, and it allows the reed to change lengths as you push on the bellows of the call. And it makes a perfect cow and calf sound.
Wow.
It's called the Hoochie Mama.
That's the stuff we didn't get enough detail on last time. Because I love the history of anything, whether it's the history of the country, the history of a gun company, and that's crazy. That is just crazy.
Yeah, and then through the Truth About Hunting, the TV series and the video series, we began to get people wanting to say, "What backpack is that you're using? How are you carrying your bow? I see you got some device you're carrying your bow with." So we realized that so many people were watching us. We sold millions of DVDs every year. Of course, that's all changed. It's streaming now on YouTube. Yeah. But anyway, we found out that we had a built-in product development deal, and all we had to do was make the products that we were using. And so Primos grew to 900 products, bow vests, bow slings, just gun vests, all kind of accessory items that we used and relied on to help make us successful.
So, Will, when you started that show, there was a little bit of outdoor programming, but there wasn't much, right?
Yeah, there was a fair amount. Outdoor programming primarily started on TNN.
Right,
if I remember correct. Mossy Oak we sponsored Mossy Oak.
Right.
And it was very, very expensive. I didn't have the funds to start my own TV show, so I endorsed Mossy Oak with Toxie Hayes back in 1986, I believe it was. Great product, and Mossy Oak Bottomland is still my favorite, still incredible product. And his sons now, Daniel and Neil, are very involved in the business and doing a great job at Mossy Oak. They have a great team of people there. Ronnie Cuz Strickland is one of the leaders, great Bill Sugg, all those guys, they're incredible. But, as we went down that road and we realized that all these products and all these people had a like mind, and we could all come together to help promote hunting. And the bottom line is this: if you don't teach people to love it, they're not going to want to protect it. So that's been our goal from day one at Primos. If we can share this with people and show them how much fun it is, and teach them to respect the process, to respect the game, then we can teach them to love it. And then they will want to protect it. And, that's why I'm so involved in conservation, and why I'm so involved in trying to make things back like God created them. So we'll have more habitat for wild creatures.
Get some quail back on the place, right? Basically.
Yeah.
Well, we'll diverge a little bit because we didn't get to talk about your gun collection and what you wanted to do with that gun collection and put that money back into conservation. Can you give the listeners a little?
Yeah. So over the last 20 years or so, I collected these London-made, custom-made for me side-by-side shotguns with hammers, the old school. Before the hammers went internal, they were outside. You had to cock the gun.
Right.
And I just think that old school is just so neat. You don't see them when you shoot the gun. I've hunted with all of them. So I ended up with a consecutively serial numbered set of 5 guns, 410, 28, the 20, 16, and 12. And I was thinking, my wife and I married, I was thinking, what are we going to do with these guns? They're worth over $1 million. I love them. I hunt with them. But at some point, I want them to do some good. And so I began to think about how I can do that. And one day I was in a conversation with who was the marketing director at the time, Corinne Johan at the Congressional Sportsman's Foundation, and we were talking about some promotions I was going to help her do for their campaign called I Fish, I Hunt, I Vote. And I told her, I said, look, I've got this set of guns. I want to somehow cause a ripple effect and create opportunity to promote the Congressional Sportsman's Foundation and the conservation organizations that have meant so much to me in my life.
Yeah.
I said, what if I gave the guns to y'all? And then, so we got to talking and a couple more conversations, and she added to it. And then Kevin Perry at Congressional Sportsman's Foundation liked the idea. And then Jeff Crane, the head of the Congressional Sportsman's Foundation out of Washington. Those are the people who, if you don't know who they are, they make sure that the right laws are being fought, the wrong laws are being fought, and the right laws are being passed to protect our hunting, fishing, and trapping rights all over. And at the local level, the state level, and the federal level. So they are an incredible, valuable part of our future. And habitat protection and all that is all a part of their deal. They're into Washington policy. That's what they do. And so we came up with this idea, and we chose Rock Island Auctions. They auctioned the finest guns in the world.
Right.
And they ended up saying, we'll auction the guns and we'll forgive the seller's commission, which could be hundreds of thousands of dollars of commission. And so December 5th through the 7th, the guns will be auctioned off in Dallas, Texas by Rock Island. And anything over the appraised value can be written off. So we're hoping that the right person will want this collection of guns. They're going to be sold as a collection. Mm-hmm. The 28 is the only one in the world. It's the only hammer gun with ejectors in the world.
Wow.
Made by Purdy. And so P-U-R-D-E-Y for those that aren't familiar with Purdy. But these guns are exquisitely beautiful. They are absolutely gorgeous. And they are precision. The triggers are perfect. The hammers on the guns are engraved with Purdy dragons. They're beautiful. I have a different bird engraved on the belly of every one of the guns. Oh, and I've hunted with every one of them. I've even killed a white-tailed deer with the 16 gauge. Number one buckshot.
There's a picture of you. When I was cruising through your website, there was a picture of you with a deer, and there's a picture of you with a turkey in a side by side.
Yeah, that's my 16 gauge too. I killed that with a 16 gauge.
And then there's a picture of you with a deer. It looks like an old picture. It just looked like, I don't know, it wasn't one of those Purdy's, but it looked like an old junk pump gun. I would call it. I can't.
Could have been, but there's one out there with me and the and the Purdy.
Is there? So as much as you, I'm sure you babied them a little bit, but they all got used.
Oh yeah, they all got used. They're in perfect shape. There's not a blemish on any of them. If anybody's interested, they can go to the website, thetruthaboutconservation.com.
Okay.
And there the whole story is told.
Gotcha.
The auction, my story, what we're trying to achieve by this, who benefits from this, Quail and Pheasants Forever, RMEF, NWTF, Ducks Unlimited, and Congressional Sportsman's Foundation will all share in the proceeds for the money to raise money for conservation.
I'd have to say that's better than leaving them to the grandkids.
There you go, buddy.
You're going to leave enough other stuff, a legacy to your grandkids, but
there you go. I don't have any children, so there are no grandchildren, but I got
you've got
nieces
family.
And nephews.
Yeah, you got nieces and nephews. But no, I think of course, I don't have a collection of Purdy's, but on that subject, a friend of mine, he had a book called London's Best, and it was like an encyclopedia in the history of the London shotgun trade.
Yep.
And as much as I didn't like reading in high school, I could go through that page by page, and the stories of how these guys learned to make these guns back in the day started out from sweeping the floors to polishing the springs to assembling and then they became like basically, and then there was the barrel guys, the trigger guys, the stock guys. Those I bought one, and this wasn't a very expensive gun. It was for me at the time, and it was a Boswell. It was made in 1909. And to this day, and I'm sure these Purdy's feel even better that thing opens and closes with that tang like a pocket watch. It's quiet and as smooth. It opens and closes almost like it was spring loaded both ways. But that's just the hand fit of that steel. It's amazing, those old
Yeah,
things.
I went to the factory last year, and it's amazing the way they get that fit perfect. When they start building the gun, they start trying to close the action. They've
Yeah.
got this candle that burns that produces nothing but black soot, and they hold that candle up to the breech and open where the action opens up, and they coat it with that black, and then they try to close it. And then they open it up and they look at where the black soot has been moved, and that's where they file.
Oh,
And they do it again. And they do it again. So when you close my purdies, they go ding. They're perfect.
yeah.
I got a piece of sand in the 28 gauge one day in Arizona, and I didn't know it. And I closed the gun, and the gun wouldn't close. And I'm going, oh my gosh, what has happened? It won't close. It won't close. And I opened up and I'm looking at the gun, and I saw that speck of sand sitting down there. And I blew it out. Ding! It closed perfectly. One speck of sand.
You know, my buddy's dad who got me into shooting, he was a Chicago police officer, and he got me into trap shooting, and they shot Browning superposed.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was on the take, but most Chicago cops didn't have a collection of Browning superposed. But talking about the tolerance, he always told us that if you put a dollar bill, you couldn't close the gun.
Right.
He never said anything about a grain of sand.
Yeah.
That's a whole different level of tolerance. Whole different level of tolerance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So when I was in London, I shot at the West London Shooting School, and these are the craftsmen who made my guns.
wow.
And one of these guys, the guy in the orange hat in the middle, is George Digweed, 28-time world champion. And that's my wife. They're married with me. But these craftsmen have all retired from Purdy, and they came to the West London Shooting School to meet me and to thank me for buying the guns and employing them all those years. And it was just a wonderful experience.
Oh my God. Yeah, that would be that'd be another step back in time. I'd like to just be in the room when you were there. Just listen to those people. I don't know if we've ever had that kind of craftsmanship in this country. I'm sure we do in some respects, but
yeah, in some respects you did. Ron, what's incredible, those barrels, those Purdy shotguns, those barrels are hand filed. Those are big tubes of steel, and they hand file the whole thing down to the size they want.
And they just measure and file.
It took me 2.5 to 3.5 years to get each gun after I ordered.
Whoa. Oh, Jesus. Now you got me all stuck on English shotguns.
Yeah, but really go to the truthaboutconservation.com, and somebody can read all about our efforts to raise money for conservation.
That's fantastic. I want to jump at another subject. Because of that picture, I saw you turkey hunting with your 16 gauge side by side. I've yet to see a person, and I've only turkey hunted a couple times, but I got friends and 2 son-in-laws that are just like, they're ate up by it, right?
Yeah.
My son-in-law and my grandson came up to Michigan for Easter, and they both got a turkey up here in Michigan. So they're eaten up by it, but they're eaten up by the shells and the chokes and the trigger and the this and the that. And there you are with a side by side. Like it's the Indian, isn't it? Not the gun. I mean,
well, no, you can this new TSS ammunition, a number 9 TSS pellet, weighs more than a number 5 lead. So the density of this TSS, this tungsten super shot, it can be loaded and shot so efficiently. You can kill turkeys with a 410 if you want to. And I still want to limit the range to 40 yards,
right?
45 maximum. And some people try to shoot further than that. But the guns have definitely made a better pattern and made a more lethal kill. In the old days, all they had was 2.5-inch shotgun shells. They shot a 12 gauge. They primarily shot 6s or 7.5s at turkeys. And when you read the old turkey hunting books, when they shot that turkey, they jumped up and took off running because they were going to get to that turkey and put their boot right the instep of in front of the heel, the instep right there in front of the heel on the neck of that turkey. And that turkey would go to flopping. And if you held him down, if his neck wasn't broke, he'd break it flopping around. Why'd they do that? Because they were a lot of times with that 2.5-inch 12 gauge, and I don't know what velocity those shells were, but they weren't that hot. And they just knocked the turkey out. And when he came to, he'd get up and take off running. Well,
sounds like they're basically using a duck load, basically, right? I mean,
yeah.
Back in the day, you could use number 6 lead for duck, right?
Yeah.
And a turkey, yeah. And there's something better about that up close part anyway. Shooting something so far away, it does take the 2 times that it stuck in my head. It was so close, I almost felt a little guilty. You know what I mean? It was
not you. You wouldn't feel guilty.
Well, all right, not guilty, but it was like, but then I wouldn't have wanted it to been at the other end of a football field because it would feel too far away, but I guess.
That's right.
So yeah, I always tease my son-in-laws because I'm like, you guys, can't you just go out there with, a regular old shotgun, just an old pump shotgun, but they got all the like you said, the TSS they're using. In their case, they're using some Boss that I familiar with, and they've got range. They use range finders, so they just make so much out of it that it almost takes a little bit of away. But it's an obsession for them.
If they're going and they're enjoying hunting, have at it.
Right. I hope they care about the habitat and the conservation as much as they care about what they're doing, because that's something. When I was a youngster, I didn't know I didn't know anything about Pittman Robertson dollars. I didn't know anything about how come I can hunt on this place. I didn't know. I was just there. That's where I was told you to go. I did. So hopefully that passion that the younger hunters have with the technology, maybe they'll make that phone call and be an advocate as much as they are obsessed with the sport.
Right.
Yeah. What was it when you started? What was your first? I mean, your dad had the Fox Model B. You said he got one out of after.
That's the first shotgun I ever shot.
So that was the first shotgun. How long before?
I didn't know how to shoot double trigger, so I put my index finger on my trigger from my hand on the front trigger, and I put my middle finger on the back trigger, and I fired both barrels at the same time. Oh my gosh! For a little guy, that's tough.
Well, that's not smart.
No.
But you did nothing in your website said anything about you being super, super smart.
There you go.
I've never heard anybody put 2 fingers. I've done it on accident, but I've never thought about putting a finger on each trigger because I love double trigger guns. Well, what was your first gun that you bought? Now you had your dad's gun. What was your first gun?
So when I was 11 years old, for Christmas that year, knowing that I was going to get to go duck hunting with my Uncle Gus, my Christmas present under the tree was a Browning Belgian-made Sweet 16.
Wow! Started right off on a high-end gun.
That back then it wasn't very expensive. That would have been 1963.
That was $55. Yeah, I guess. Who knows? What did you start? Did you just kind of stick with that gun for a long time?
Oh, forever. Yeah, forever. And then later I bought a used 870 12 gauge pump. Yeah.
Did the Browning Belgian Browning, did you ever try cleaning or taking apart? Because you're supposed to be a gunsmith to do that.
I did. I learned to take them apart and get the rings cleaned up and know exactly how to put them back on there.
That was a fussy. It was such a complicated gun that it was pretty fussy about getting dirty and everything.
Yeah. And then I shot a lot of skeet as a young kid too, and so I shot a Remington 1100 12 gauge at that.
That was my first gun. My dad bought it for Mr. Gorman, who was the cop, and that was the gun he let me shoot when he'd take me trap shooting on. So that got me out of going to church. Now I know that maybe down south that would be frowned on because
it would have been.
It
Still
would
is.
But when I moved to Virginia for a decade, you weren't allowed to hunt on Sundays in Virginia,
That's
and
right.
the neighbors didn't appreciate it even if you wanted to go out and target shoot.
That's right. It's still that way in Pennsylvania?
I think there's 3 or 4 eastern states that still have the Sunday prohibitions. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was so they put your butt in the pew. I think back in the day, the pastors and the deacons were all part of the General Assembly of the state. They wanted to make sure you were in church as well as fair. When did you get the obsession? Or I shouldn't say an obsession, the passion. Obviously, that grew with the company growing and getting older. When did you get that first Purdy? What got you idea to say, I'm going to get myself a Purdy made for me?
Well, that Fox Model B, just the marriage to metal and wood and the side by side and just the old school, just that I don't know, the old books, the Lefevre shotguns and the ads when I was growing up, the old L.C. Smith ads, from Field and Stream and Outdoor Life in the late 50s and early 60s. I mean, that was just what it was. And so I went hunting with a friend in Twin Bridges, Montana, and all he shoots is side-by-side hammer guns.
Okay.
And that was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And it just rekindled my love of the engraving, the wood to metal fit, the beauty, the craftsmanship. And that's where I decided, you know what, I'm going to try to get a collection of Purdy's. Now, I didn't know at the time that I would ever get them, but I did reserve all the serial numbers when I ordered the first one. And I also didn't know that I would get to the point that I would be able to have them and to be able to give them back to help raise money. And also, it's more than just raising money. It's raising the consciousness of where we live, how we affect the habitat, and how we can change it. And it's all about education. It's about understanding how we got to where we are today from where we used to be when there were so many more birds. And if you look at the surveys, I mean, everything we do benefits not only the game species, but the non-game species.
Oh, yeah.
It's so important to our lives, to our future, to enjoyment of life, to clean water. I mean, the prairie pothole region is a perfect example.
Yeah.
If you don't teach the children about it, you don't teach them that exists and how important it is to the life cycle of waterfowl and shorebirds and birds in general, then you're never going to love it. You're never going to want to protect it. So we've got to tell the story.
Yeah. And the other day when I was on with that fellow who does a lot of stuff with college and younger people, I told him the analogy is kind of like you got to keep getting people in through the door. Like I've been in martial arts most of my life and still do jujitsu to this day. And you need 30 new students a month for one to stick around. So, and then that one will stick it out. And then, so you got to spread that word because there's only X amount of people that are going to care that much that might end up becoming a Will Primos and inventing something and then caring that much about, it. I don't want to say it means more to you than them, but in a way that it doesn't mean as much to them yet, but you want to put that seed in there where it's gonna feel like when you sit down for your last duck hunt or your last bird walk, you're not gonna have any regrets.
I hope not. I don't think so. But I tell you what, when you go hunting, you take the time to get it together and to go and walk the grasslands of Montana, Dakotas, Arizona, whatever it is, and hunting upland birds, and you end up finding none. And you realize the place you chose, that habitat wasn't there for them. And then you begin to understand and realize we can change this. We can change the way water is used. We can change the way water is saved. We can change what we do to the land that allows the right grasses and the right things to be there so that these birds will have the habitat that they need. And then when you go back to a place that's been managed correctly and you've got all the opportunity to you want, what's great is when the limit might be 8 or whatever, and you shoot 4 or 5 and you say, I'm done. But you
Mhm.
just continue to watch the dogs. I
Yep.
mean, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. I love, did you get into having any dogs? I don't think we ever talked about that. Do you have a dog history?
So life got busy, but my Uncle Gus gave me one of his dogs. His name was Tag, T-A-G. And he was my lab that I trained and just had more fun hunting mallards with him and mainly mallards. That's mainly what we hunted in the Mississippi Delta. It's
Yeah.
mainly what we had. A lot of that's changed because a lot of things have changed for the flyway. That's
Yeah.
not as many ducks in our flyway right now. But yeah, I got too busy to working, and that wasn't fair to the dog. So I go with people and help them with their dogs because I just didn't have the time.
Ah, that's a one piece missing, but you can't have everything, right? You
That's
can't
right. That's right.
you have a lot, but boy, the dog part. Can we get you a dog for the last couple decades? You need a dog, Will.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Come on,
I got so many hobbies. I'd have to talk to Mary because if I get one more hobby, Mary might not be around.
oh, you don't want to lose Mary. How long have you been with Mary?
35 years.
35 years. I'm hitting 40 this year. But yeah, that's the one thing. So if we ever get to hunt together, we're just going to have to hunt with my mongrels.
There you go. I'm in.
I go out to Dakotas. I'll probably hit Montana and Dakotas. I'll hit both Dakotas every year.
Yeah. I had 2 Hungarian partridge. I'm in Montana right now. I had 2 Hungarian partridge walk across the back of my place just a minute ago.
Did you really?
I think it looked like a male and a female. I got my binoculars as fast as I can, but I couldn't tell for sure before they got back in the grass.
Yeah, they're all paired up right now. When I was in North Dakota for this little dog event, I got to stay in the house these friends let me stay in. It was all to myself. So I took all the roads that we take to all of our hunting spots out there. And I can't tell you how many pairs of Huns I put up off the side of the road because they're all paired up now.
Awesome.
I will say that I felt like, well, somebody's doing something right at least there, because I just don't even want to say how many birds I saw, but I saw birds and they were definitely paired up and that's real typical. And the only thing I didn't see was any sharp tails, but that's because they're all on the Lex and I wasn't out walking on the prairie.
Yeah.
I was driving the back roads and just kind of just driving the back, even though it wasn't hunting season, I felt like I was on a hunting trip,
Right. Yeah.
because a lot of hunting is just an hour drive back to camp or an hour and a half drive back to camp. And it felt just like it could have been fall, but it was full on spring. And I saw in South Dakota, and I never saw this before. I never spent any time in the spring in South Dakota. I've only go out there in the fall, like most traveling wing shooters do. And the same thing happens with the pheasants. You see them paired up, cock and hen. And I saw this. I took back roads to a friend's place, and I don't think I went 5 miles without seeing a pair on the side of the road. So you imagine what's not on the side of the road.
That's great. That's great.
And that kind of goes to what pheasants forever, quail forever, and the prairie. It goes to even though they've got to talk the farmers into it in some cases or educate the farmers. You were right in the beginning. You said we could get it back to the good old days if we tried, or pretty close. Maybe not the permission to go on anybody's property anymore, because you're fighting with too many moms and dads and younger people. But I don't think we'll get that. But we could get the birds back. Maybe not the permission, but the birds.
There you go.
Well, when you were a kid, I've got to assume. Now, I know you were probably at church in the morning on Sundays, but did you watch American Sportsman on ABC in the afternoon on Sundays?
Kurt Gowdy is my hero.
Oh, I love you.
Kurt, somebody asked me today, who is your hero in the hunting world? And I said, Kurt Gowdy. They said, who is Kurt Gowdy? And I said, buddy, when you got home from church at 3:00 on ABC was the American Sportsman.
Yep.
I can tell you, I watched Peter Fonda go on a caribou hunt. I remember that. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yep.
And I watched Kurt Gowdy go on a duck hunt. And he entertained by showing all these places you could live and go. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it kindled a fire. I was going to watch it. I was going to be there.
Yeah. I think that's what did it for me because of where I grew up, talking so few people, were hunters. They were all just, cops and firemen and factory workers and but at the barber shop there was always a sailfish mounted on the wall or a pheasant or a deer head, even in the city, in the barber shop. And there was always a Field and Stream or an Outdoor Life magazine. And I got Outdoor Life magazine when I was probably in seventh grade. I asked for it for Christmas. And so the barber shop, I could see other magazines and American Sportsman. That was enough to keep me like I knew I was going to have some piece of that. I wasn't going to be in the call or the gear business, and who knew I was going to be in the podcast business when I retired. But uh, that stuff that I saw when I was a kid, that never left me either. It was I love that show.
You know, bringing back all that. So I've bought a few LC Smiths lately, and one AH Fox. All these guns are 100 years old or older.
Yeah.
And I'm looking so forward to hunting with them.
I don't want to say a favorite because everybody's got all the places I go they tend to be favorites, but I know you spend some time in Montana. Is that a go-to bird spot for you, or is that just
Mary and I bought a
get away?
place here. We've been coming here for 30, 35 years, elk hunting and just being a part of this country. And so we bought a place here where we can come whenever we want, and we'll stay for a month at a time or 2 months at a time.
Yeah.
And just enjoy being here. There's a sporting clay range, the Gallatin Sporting Club at Three Forks, about 20 minutes away, and great volunteer club. They do a fantastic job.
Yeah.
And you can sharpen your skills and stay tuned in for sporting clay shooting and for hunting. And so I love doing that. But we like everything about Montana this time of year. In the winter, it gets a little bit too long.
Yeah, you got to pick your days to get in and out of there.
Yeah.
I was there this January. It was nice one day and it wasn't the next. Didn't care. Do you get some bird? Have you done some decent amount of bird hunting out there, upland bird hunting in Montana?
Not in Montana. Every time I'm usually leaving to go hunt with Patrick Flanagan or Border to Border Outfitters. So we hunt the Cheyenne River, the Sioux there in South Dakota reservation. Hunting Minnesota with him. And this year I'm scheduled only to go to Arizona with him.
Okay.
But hunting gamble, scalies, and merns.
Yeah. How did you did pretty good on them then, huh?
We do. We do. Last year the merns were hard to find. It was very, very dry.
Yeah.
And so up high, they weren't. It was tough to find the merns, but we had lots of great gamble and scale shooting.
How about Minnesota? You say you go up to Minnesota with him. You got to be chasing roughies and woodcock, I'm sure.
That's right.
You're not going after the 1 day permitted sharptail or the pheasants that you can get, down in southern Minnesota. How's your shooting in the woods? Because that's another level of wing shooting that people who haven't done it.
You read the book that Anthony Matarese and I authored together, the Straight Shooting for Hunters book. And, if you will use your eyes. And so one of the number one things is when the dog is pointed, just because the dog's pointed and looking at the ground, that doesn't mean the bird, the woodcock, the grouse is there. He may have run off and he may be 10 yards over to the left.
Right.
So your eyes should be in a soft focus, gazed out above the dog.
Right.
So when the bird moves and launches, your eyes, your peripheral vision is your safety factor. It's kind of like standing there and you see a bus coming peripherally. That is one of the things that God gave us. We see that and we react to get out of the way because our peripheral vision catches it.
Mm-hmm.
So on a bird, you see the peripheral vision and your eyes come back into focus much faster, like hundreds of thousands of times faster than they go out to focus. So you look beyond, and when the flash comes, your eyes come back to it. Now your eyes go to the bird and you do your best to see something about the bird, the beak, the head, the wing, a flash of color, something about whatever bird it is that you're shooting. Yeah. And your brain will tell you when you mount, if you've got a good mount, you've practiced your mount. So when you mount, you are looking down that rib without trying to. You mount, and the angle, distance, and speed of that bird will tell you where to go, and you ignore the trees.
That's what I was going to say. You got to
ignore all the little poplars and all this. You just totally ignore them. And I'm going to tell you, I've never seen a bird knocked down so quick with one pellet as a woodcock.
Oh,
it may take two for a grouse, but,
right.
You get it in there, and I shoot. Typically, I shoot improved cylinders or skeet on those type areas.
Yeah,
and it's amazingly how successful you can be.
I will say I've done a lot of it because I live in Michigan the last 40 years, and it took a little bit of getting used to it. But I know I never used that for many, many years, even with my own dogs. I was always trying to look at what are they looking at? What are they? I made that mistake, I would say, for a couple decades until it was actually easier to hunt with other people's dogs, because when their dog's on point, they're kind of going in. And I have a friend of mine that taught me something new last year. When they're walking in on a point, he won't walk. He'll have you walk another 10 yards and stop, because even sometimes the audio of it will get you to. Your ears are working like your eyes too. Your ears are listening 180 degrees. And he doesn't want one person cracking leaves and stepping on sticks while he's looking. Like it was like left guy, right guy, left. And it was a lot easier to shoot a bird when it wasn't my dog. I was halfway, like not even just saying, where's the bird? Sometimes you can't help but look at your own dog because you're like, look how beautiful it is. So when it's your buddy's dog on point, it's a lot easier to focus on the birds.
Yeah.
But rough grouse hunting, woodcock hunting it's its own thing, but I think you're right. You got to use the same philosophy. You have to. Yeah.
Man, is it fun though? It's great.
Yeah. And getting one or two of those a day, that's all you could get a lucky day, but that might be it. And that's enough. That's enough for me. Yeah. Well, Will, I really appreciate you making time. And I'm going to tell everybody I'm not saying I was a fanboy. I just knew the name like many sportsmen know your name. And the first time when I got your number from Corinne, you called me up and you said, "Hey, Ron, Will Primos." I was like, oh my God, he called me. I've talked to people with way less status in this world. You call, you don't even send a text. You just call. I love that. You'll call. And if you say, I think I'm going to have time later in May, which you told me in beginning of April, boom, there's a phone call comes up. And I really appreciate your attentiveness to, I know you like getting the word out and you love talking about the history of everything, but I will say you are a pleasure to have as a guest and to communicate with.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, thank you for doing this podcast. Thank you for loving the hunting dogs. It's all about the dogs. If I had to go upland hunting and I didn't get to have a dog, I'm going to wait till I can. It's right. All about the dogs.
Somebody asks you to go road hunting, you'll say, "No, I'll wait till my buddy comes out with his dog."
I ain't going road hunting.
I think we could end it on that. I ain't going road hunting.
I ain't going road. That's a T-shirt.
That's a T-shirt right there.